Good evening. It is my pleasure to present Anda Rottenberg, the curator of this marvelous show, who came to Vilnius and did it herself. And she is also known for many other works, curatorial works, and her texts as art critic and her books. And she, of course, is a curator who curated one of the first major Lithuanian, like Baltic shows in Warsaw Gallery Zachenta, while she was the director there, Personal Time. And so we are going to talk tonight with Anda about these exhibitions and her other exhibitions as well. So Anda, I'm really glad that you are here and I have an opportunity to ask you what was the initial idea, how you decided to combine those three major Polish stars together.
First of all, good afternoon, and I'm very glad that you are here with us, Laima. And well, this is a long story. It's not. It wasn't a decision that I took immediately, but it grew up uh, along the course of my studies on separately on Alina Szapocznikow, Andrzej Wróblewski, and finally Andrzej Wajda. And one day it came to my mind that these are three people who communicated to each other, who were friendly. At least Andrzej Wróblewski and Andrzej Wajda were friends till the end of the life of Andrzej Wróblewski. But Wajda was also a friend of Alina Szapocznikow, and Alina and Andrzej Wróblewski knew each other, respected each other. And then I learned that each of them lost their fathers during the war when they were adolescent, and then they were born something like almost the same year. So being semi-orphaned, involved in the war, being teenagers during the period of adolescence, and then showing their war trauma during the whole their life. So it's a given moment. It was obvious for me that I have to put them in one show and see how many links we can discover in between their artworks.
Yes, indeed. And going through exhibition, I already had this opportunity. I was amazed also at very wonderful display, and really all those excerpts from the films of Vaida, which you chose, they correspond so well with works of Wróblewski and Szapocznikow, and it's really those relationship of war and bodies and trauma. So it's really this relationship which goes deeply from this personal experience to experience of war and trauma. So I really wondered how you decided to concentrate, like if you could name those main ideas which you discovered, because along your way you also made some discoveries which were not known at that time.
Well, mainly it happened to me that I discovered the memory of Vilnius in Andrzej Wróblewski works because it wasn't obvious for many decades. Um, most of the paintings were never shown during his lifetime, Andrzej Wróblewski.
Yes.
And then, only one execution, several paintings that he painted for the competition, for the given exhibitions, but the body of work was unknown. And the longer I looked to the different things that he did, and then I started to rediscover the real notion of some paintings. For example, it was the tradition of art history said there is a uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. It's not. It's the Vilnius Ghetto. And because I made the studies not only about Wróblewski himself, but about the situation in Vilnius and in Lithuania during the war. how it went, what, what, which were the habits of imposed by Germans on the local people, especially on Jews. And it became obvious for me that the painting considered to be referring to the Warsaw Ghetto is referring to the Vilnius Ghetto.
Yes.
So this was a great discovery for me. And another painting, which also became obvious, but after long discussion, that the the painting, which is called the execution with SS officer, is not an SS officer because I checked the uniforms of different formations in Germany and Russia. And it was obvious that the uniform is made for the Soviet Army Special Troops called Smersh, which were which were fighting with the so-called enemies behind the first line of battles. So, the army conquered the city, and then Smersh came and made the clearance of the enemy. So it should be that he met this kind of executions somewhere in the ruins of Vilnius. He might not see it, but met, he might he might meet the Smersh officers on the street when they were searching, you know, and but there was a communist period. So his mother, who gave the titles to the painting, for any case, shifted the attention of the viewers to the Germans.
It's
And it lasted in art history for 50 years.
Yes, I read in your article that it's only now that we reconsider you as researcher and others the titles which mother of the artist gave because the artist unfortunately died very young, and so now you also perhaps made different sections or like sequence of works.
Well, the sequence of works were already given by Anna Krull, who made a really basic researches about when he painted what, because he left the diary. And when you check the diary, you know when each painting was made, executed. So the numbers in this 8 executions are not proper because execution with Smierz was number 1, was made first. We know, but they have totally different numbers now. And art history had to say, okay, we know that it was the first, but it has the number 4, and we have to live up with that.
Andrzej Wróblewski is the artist which connects us because he was born in Vilnius and he lived here until he and his mother and brother they repatriated. They had to repatriate to Poland, and unfortunately his father died when Gestapo searched the house, and so. Did you know that there were also works by Andrzej Wróblewski in Lithuania?
Well, I know that he left behind some etchings because he was trained by his mother mainly, and he did it, and we knew it, especially the one which is here in the exhibition, Memento Mori. So I knew that piece, but I couldn't obtain the real object. I didn't know that it's still here in Vilnius. And, well, it's okay that it's now shown. And I know that he helped his mother to produce some holidays, cards, and so on and so on. But I think he was also learning paintings, but nothing could be found. And it's such a pity because it would be interesting to see the, paintings made by 16, 17-year-old Wróblewski when he was learning.
Yes, of course. And Shapochnikow, you also curated her exhibition in Zahenta. And I think it was one of the first major exhibitions where her international career maybe started, which led later to her exhibition in MoMA. Uh, I happened to see that exhibition and I was really impressed.
And you mean the one in 98?
Yes.
Well, yes, because it was the first opportunity to do this comprehensive show after the death of Roman Cieślewicz, who was a husband of Alina, and they had to share with the son. They shared the body of work, and they didn't like each other. So, when Roman died, soon after the exhibition that I made him in Zachenta, I I went to Paris and asked Piotr whether he's ready to talk about the big exhibition of his mother. So we did it, uh, and it was the first time when the hidden pieces, hidden in the garage, some in the storages, are less popular than the others, which were on view in the museums in Poland, especially in the Sztuki Museum in Łódź, that we were uh, that stayed in our memory. So I I discovered so many different things, you know, almost unknown, even to me, and also, of course, to the public, that I really did a huge exhibition of her retrospective, but it took a long time. I should say that also Joanna Metkowska, director of Museum of Modern Art, made an effort because we started to, to uh, evaluate the whole work, reinterpret it, because it was pushed and stayed in the notion of modernity and or the nouveau realism. So we wanted to take it out from that and try to think about her body, her feminism, you know, totally differently oriented way of thinking about her sculptures. And Joanna made a huge international conference about her. And step by step, finally, she started to gain the international recognition. But it was a long process.
I can imagine. I'm really glad that also her sculpture, which is now here in Vilnius, which opens the exhibition Difficult Age, was also shown in exhibition Gender Check, curated by Bojana Page, where I saw it. And it's really a very powerful piece. And you mentioned that it was important to bring back this feminist and her personal to show that these works are also personal, to connect them not only with this modernist discourse but with her life. I find it very interesting what you did.
Yes, because she herself, she didn't want to talk about her war experiences.
Mm.
And it was said something like that was her strategy not to talk about the war and making this, so to say, modern sculptures, but each figure was wounded, was, you couldn't find a really full figure. She made some sculpture about sexuality itself, which is the other side of the death, sex and death. It's a junction. But she, mm, they vanished because she did it somewhere in Yugoslavia as a plein air stone carving, and there's nothing out of it. They're lost forever, I think. But what he did, she cast it out of bronze. Then you could see this kind of a everlasting um, disability.
Mm.
Disability, and if you look to these figures, having in mind the contemporary research about, for example, necro performance, you could see the links that she early enough did. She showed us bodies in the process of destruction, but never say why. So, yeah, and I appreciate very much, and I adore her early figures because they are not that obvious as what she did later on from polyurethane and polyester, all these transparencies, which were more transparent in terms of the notion and message. But she also hid her message in the earlier figures.
Yeah.
And it's a pity that she didn't have a proper storages, and many fantastic sculptures vanished forever. They were destroyed, or nobody knows what happened.
It's a pity, and we have here a herbarium on show. It's a wonderful cast of her son's body, and you presented it really beautifully. And this idea of really casting from the body, of course, it's you can say, yeah, it's in the tradition of nouveau realism, but she has something very different about it. And I think maybe in relation to Wajda and Wróblewski, we see this difference very clearly. This transformation, what you mentioned, coming from life to death, and Wróblewski painting dead figures together,
Oh,
painting them blue. Um, and how is Wajda stepping into the picture? Of course, we can see how, but maybe you had a chance, for example, to talk to him about your idea.
Um, no, I I was in the period of my studies that I spoke with Vaida and asked him questions that he didn't want to answer, about his strategies, how to shift the attention of the viewer from the hero which was written in the scenario to the real hero by by composing the frame. And he didn't want to answer very much, but I traced his strategies in his first movies. Uh, but I didn't get the invitation to make the exhibition before he died. So, I mean, mm, I, s- I was working with his wife, uh, um, and she agreed, and she went for the exhibition in Krakow, and she liked it, and it was very good that Krystyna Zachwatowicz really appreciated all that project, but Wajda couldn't because he was not among us anymore.
It's a pity, of course. I happened to meet him at Gdynia Film Festival when Povidoki, this after image, was premiered, and it's really impressive way how he connects and how you connected all those visual strategies. For example, the figure of bystander, or somebody who is like, you see the figure only from behind, for example, the bus driver. And it's interesting that the bus driver actually sits on the passenger seat. He's not
Yeah,
on.
he probably is sitting backward to the direction of the journey, and finally he's looking to the glass which is in the back of the bus. So it's not a real driver.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first version, the blue driver, it's like that person. Because in the second version, which is not here in the exhibition, it's a real driver. But the blue driver is not really a driver, so it's a passenger. Um, I don't know why it is called driver, but if you look carefully to the painting, you don't see the wheel.
Yes.
You don't see the instruments. He later on he really transformed it into the driver, but the first driver was a secret.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you really open this anatomy of gaze, how this figure of bystander, somebody who is
The
looking.
bystander is a very important notion, also for, I mean, also for the paintings of Wróblewski, uh, because, yeah, he obviously didn't read uh, Hannah Arendt
Mm.
and didn't develop her, her definition of bystander. But what Wróblewski did, he makes us being bystanders. We are staying in the first row looking at the exhibition at that execution. We even don't see the perpetrators, so they might stay next to us. And we are in the same row. They are killing people. We are standing next here looking from the very tight, frame to the process when the people are being killed and dying.
And
So
we are
it's,
becoming executioners as well, in a way,
yeah,
because we are in the same.
we are in the same situation.
Yes.
This is our common stage, the
Mm.
stage of the war, because there is a new notion, the theater of the war, right?
Yes.
So it could be theater and the stage of the war, where everybody is having his own role to perform.
Mm.
So he involved the viewer to be in that same stage.
Yes, it's very impressive, and now I would like to ask your opinion about another exhibition which Giedrė Jankevičiūtė curated. Uh, to my mind, they come very beautifully together, uh, make both of them somewhat richer, like complementing each other.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was a very, very good idea to to give the background which shows the situation here in Vilnius or in Lithuania when Andrzej Wróblewski grew up. So, and what was done by the local artists, what kind of way of thinking they represented at the same period, and how do they look backward to the war,
Mhm.
because many pieces are made after the war, like Wróblewski also did it later.
Mhm.
So it's this kind of a mm, complementary exhibition uh, are probably, I hope, would enrich the imagination about all that spectrum that Wróblewski was involved in.
What is important also to feel and think about Wróblewski as also artist who was born here and like our artist as well. It's important not to draw those national boundaries and not to really sort people in any way. So for me, I think it brings Wróblewski closer and such a important artist, which we can also. I was writing an article about possible connections with modern Lithuanian artists, and I found very interesting parallels, which may or may not be influenced by Wróblewski, but a certain way of thinking. So I'm really glad that those two ways are coming together. But now I would like also to talk about your curatorial practice because I admire you as very brave and really uh, great curator. And in your curatorial practice, what were the most important exhibitions you curated, or maybe important events which has changed your perspective? I was reading the book you wrote, your letters to Harald Zeman from Poland with love, and it's an interesting account of your curatorial way and thinking.
Well, it's these are really funny letters because I take the liberty to talk freely. I mean, to discuss without the answer because Harold is in the heaven and he can't answer me. But it is, I found it's amusing to to give some notes also to his exhibition in Zachęta that I tried to do the first ever analysis of that show, finally, after 20 years, you know, and to recollect what was it, what was on that show, because, everything went so quickly. But, mm, I did many exhibitions, and I can't evaluate which was better, which was worse. Each exhibition when I'm working on is the most important for me right now. But then it's over, so I look to the future and I forget what I did. So it may happen that maybe I repeat some ideas. Maybe everybody does it because you are very much connected with your imagination about this and that. Or I try to change it, and I can't tell you there were easier and less easy. So in general, in the 90s, it was much easier to do the shows, much than now, especially if the show was based on the loans from different museums, because I didn't have any problem to collect everything what I wanted for Alina Szapocznikow show, and my colleague, younger colleague, who did the big retrospective of Andrzej Wróblewski year before, also didn't have any problems to collect everything. Now it's almost impossible. So I can't tell you why. It's a secret. I mean, there are many different factors why I didn't get 5 basic, very important pieces for this show here. So we still have. I mean, the in my head there are still gaps on the exhibition space for because when you plan the show you see it in imagination, and I see there's no this painting and that painting and that painting, and it was just why. Well, there were some slight excuses which I can't treat seriously, and it's a pity. But on the other hand, that's why I said in the 90s that was much easier. And also, I remember I did the exhibition in 95. It was first exhibition in Poland that you you commission the new pieces from the world stars and you didn't pay them. So I just approached some stars like Yanis Kounelis, uh, mm, uh, Anselm Kiefer, Christian Boltański, Lawrence Winner, Ian Hamilton Finlay, Jochen Gertz, and I said, you know what, I'm planning the exhibition about this and that and that, and I would like to have your new piece. And they said, okay. So they work on it, brought it there, install it, and say thank you very much. I mean, I mean, it didn't come to my mind that I may ask whether they would like money or don't not like money because I simply didn't have it. So I didn't put that question. And nobody of them say, wait a second, where is my fee? Nobody. So it doesn't happen now as well.
That is very interesting because I think similar things happened in Lithuania with Sculpture Park, Europos Parkas, which has
I know.
works by Magda,
Abakanovic, yeah.
yeah,
She had
and
it. Egg.
these are really amazing, perhaps the strongest pieces, and she really liked herself very much this work. I interviewed her, and she said that this is perhaps probably the best thing I've done outdoors. She really liked. She visited several times the site, and you write about Magdalena Bakanovic and her Abakans, stressing that female artists are still somehow undervalued. Do you still think the same? Like nowadays, we still need to struggle.
The story with Magdalena was a very special story because the best she did ever were her abacans. It was very feministic, you know, so early pieces showing her female identity. And all of a sudden, she didn't want to be included in that movement because she said, first of all, I'm not the weaver, I'm a sculptor. And that was just a material. I said, Magdalena, but we all understand it. This is the soft sculpture that you did. She said, yes, but I'm considered to be a weaver all over the world, so I would don't want to refer to that. And then she sort of, in a different way than Alina, but she didn't want to talk about the feministic side of her practice, of her objects. It was so obvious, you see it, you know, it's vagina, like 5 meter high,
Mhm.
and she said it's a biological form,
Mhm.
so uh, I spoke with her several times, and she said, don't you ever mention it. So I wrote that only after her death because she couldn't call me and say, how did you dare to publish it, and so on and so on. So it happened to her, and we in Poland, we had a very strong feminist movement in art in several ways. First, we had a very good sculptors, female sculptor, who were very active in the 50s and the 60s. And they were strong, great, and they never rose up their femininity. Then there was a next, except Alina, and Magdalena, that she didn't want to talk about it. And then there was a next generation of, so to say, conceptual art. Uh, And they were very strong, like, Natalia, like Eva Partum, but also, Maria Pinińska-Bereś, who was more chamber-like. There was another, because there was not conceptual art, there was soft sculpture with a very strong feministic impact, and then it developed. Teresa Murak started that way. And then there was a martial law, end of communism. During martial law, nobody take care where's the feminist because everybody fought against the regime. And just after, when the system changed, and all of a sudden, those positive sides of, according to the Polish law, communist law, were taken out, like the paragraph that each woman deserved the law to take the decision about her own abortion. So we fought for the liberty, for the freedom, and all of a sudden women were taken off from this freedom. And that there was a third generation of feminist artists, um, in frame of the so-called critical art. And I remember, like, in the beginning of 2000, I counted maybe 10 of them, much younger than me, and each of them was really very focused on her identity. And I was so happy. I did the exhibition in Berlin about it, 2003, I think, which was called White Mazurka. And yeah, so, and they're still fighting. So, I mean, now it's a different way there. The whole society is fighting,
Yeah.
not only the artists. But,
And we support them. We also
yeah,
support them from the
yeah,
way
come
we
on,
can.
come on.
Yeah. Um, it's an interesting story, and it seems like feminists are trying to do their best to emphasize the importance of the artists, and sometimes the artists are just like, as you explained, trying to say that, oh, I have nothing to do with that, but still, it's important that artists are now women artists are now somehow more visible and more important. And
Yes, but because the younger generation doesn't have a problem with that. They show it up, you know, as of starting with Natalia. They show it lively. But those women who were born earlier and who had this kind of a double imagination about her status. And from one side, she's an artist like Magdalena. The artist in front of me. So I would like to be artist like not female, not male, but more male than female, so to say. Leaving behind all these biological secrets that she left over. And now we have to deal with that, and we have again reinterpret the body of work made by Magdalena.
yes. Also, I wanted to ask you, you wrote in your book a chapter on Gabriel Narutowicz, first president of Poland. His brother was Lithuanian signatory, you know. And
Yeah,
it,
they come from Żmuć.
yes,
I don't know how do you pronounce.
Žemaitija.
Yeah.
So it seems that Zahenta is a very dangerous place. You were the director, and unfortunately, the first president was killed in Zahenta, and
Yes.
you opened the play to honor him. And then this unfortunate Maurizio Catala and the 9 hour happened with that Pope John Paul II hit by meteorite and the Polish parliamentarians coming to the rescue. So, do you still think that this is really dangerous profession to be, especially to be the director of the Zahenta?
You know, from one hand, after that affair, everybody came to conclusion that it doesn't pay back to deal with the artist and fight against the art piece. You know, that fighting against the art piece is ridiculous, right? In yeah, you fight you have your political weapon. You fight against another politician with your political argument, I don't know, strategies. But to fight against the art piece, which is, you know, uh, it's absurd and ridiculous. But you never know. We have different politicians now, and one day he can come back and try to discuss with another art piece. You know, it's a problem of open-minded. You know, I remember that because now that the attention is focused on theater in Poland, and there was one performance that the actress stood on the stage and pronounced to the viewers, to the public, a sentence. Everything what's going on in the theater is a fiction. So that they don't mingle it with the reality. Didn't help. You know, you produce the fiction and the people are taking it as reality. And you can't help it.
Yeah, I remember there was the case with Dorota Nieznalska.
The case with Dorota Nieznalska also.
Uh, but also looking from here, it seems that this censorship and help to really, for Polish artists, maybe it sounds cruel, helped, not really helped, but they really made some very powerful political works critiquing the system that the church and the politicians
You know, there is no formal official censorship in Poland. The censorship existed till 1989. Then it was banned. So formally, according to the existing law, there's no censorship in Poland. But the gestures done by directors of institutions, politicians, different influence, I mean, people who have the influence try to shift some things, some, you know, You can, being a minister, you can always change the theater director. You know, as you can't close the performance because there is no censorship, you can change the director, which is going on steadily now in Poland. So this is also the censorship, but not straightforward. So it might be better when in the communist period it was clear this is taken out by censorship, right?
Yeah. And so, does it mean that we should actually now learn from Wróblewski and Wajda from his early pieces how to show something in a different way using certain language?
Well, I tell you, all the artists, theater makers, cinema maker, movies, especially writers, train that uh, system for the whole post-war period up to 89, so that everybody read the text in between lines.
Yes.
And there was a common understanding, mutual understandings, that when you read the text, read it between lines. When someone is showing this in the movie, that means something else that you're what you see. This is a play. Uh, this is the game that was played with the Polish authorities for 50, almost 40, for 45 years. So finally, now it's over. We would like to say what we want to say using the proper words. And it occurs, it's impossible.
Yeah, but on the other hand, again, artists are somehow stronger thinking about Agnieszka Holland or marvelous Olga Tokarczuk, who won the Nobel Prize, and especially women artists, they are so full of energy and really inventive.
Yes. And happily, uh, the Polish, so to say, authorities are not able to forbid their activities because they don't possess that power yet. Because Olga Tokarczuk is publishing the books on all over the world, and she's writing what she wants. They say the same are theater makers who not obviously are going to come back to make the performances on the stage in Poland, which is a pity, like Lupa. Yes, but he did. And let's hope they would stay, uh, they will keep their attitude and be independent till the very end. Because the history is turning around. So one day, those who are today responsible for everything that they did as a harm to the society would need to answer or be responsible for that in the future. It's like stage of the world is turning. Once you are at the stage, the next time, after some time, you are at the backstage. And you have to take it into consideration when you taking this or that decisions, that you would not live forever and you would not have the power forever.
Yeah, that is perhaps the very good conclusion, both about this exhibition, which also teaches us a lot how history works, what we can learn from art, but also about nowadays, about what is happening now, that it's not going to last forever. That of course the changes are coming, and I know that people are uh, perhaps asking questions on that Facebook page, or are there questions? Or people are passive as usually, but I have questions which I always wanted to ask you, because I also visited the Polish Pavilion in 1999 when you were a director, when Kozira was presented. And At that time, I used to work at Cultural Weekly, and it was my first and the only time as the editor of visual arts page when four people called me. And Kozira, before she was presented in Venice Biennial, her bathhouse was shown at Contemporary Art Center. Four art critics called me and said, I want to write about this. That was the only time in my career as an editor that was such an impression and fascination by this work. So I would really like to ask you about Kozira and her women's and men's bathhouse and how it was working in Venice. She
For,
got special mention, right?
yes. First of all, I was a commissioner of the pavilion, but the curator of the show was Hanna Wróblewska,
Yes.
who is now a director of the Zachęta Gallery. So she deserved this congratulations. I was happy about that, but it wasn't my presentation. But Katarzyna is doing very well, happily, because she was also an object of very strong attacks from the press. And when she got that prize, everybody just decided, oh, no, it's better not to touch that subject. So she survived. And yes, she did a very perverse thing because she was thinking about the sex as a costume. That, because the real sex is in your head. The rest is a costume. Body is a costume which shows or is hiding your real notion of your sex. That means gender. You might be a woman, but you feel man. You might be a man, but you feel woman. And she did these transformations in her several pieces. The bath in Budapest was one part of it. But because she transformed herself into a male person, it was easy because she's slim. Uh, and entered the forbidden world of the man. But she did later on many different movies and performances with changing the sign of the sex. So it's in terms I discovered thanks to her that it might function like that. So she did a great job in terms not only in terms of art but in terms of way of thinking about it.
Can we tell that it's somehow a continuation of Szapocznikow way of
Yeah,
thinking
she
through the
was
body?
in a way, she claimed that the first exhibition when she was still a student, that she went to see, and which was so very impressive for her, was the big retrospective of Szapocznikow in Zachęta. And she said it publicly many times. So probably that happened. Of course, her art is totally different, but she also, I tell you why, because she also passed cancer.
Yes.
And she also made a sort of a art piece around it.
Yes, this Venus.
Yeah. So, you know, this kind of thinking about your illness and being ill, being an artist and trying to express everything what happens to you, it's probably taken from Szapocznikow art in a very total different way because she's another artist. So yeah, you could ask her. She is still active.
Yes. And I've got a question asking what are your relationship with Lithuanian art and artists?
Yeah, friendly,
Good. But maybe you can
friendly. Yeah.
elaborate on. I know that Vytautas Landsbergis played at the opening of Personal Time.
Yes, yes. But I didn't meet him first time then. I met him few months before in Gwangju in Korea when he came to for on the invitation of Namjoon Paik and not as a president of the republic, but as a member of Fluxus and friend of Machunas. And
Classmate even.
yeah, and he just performed the. It was a performance together with Namjoon Pang on the stage in Korea. So that's I mean it was amazing. So I asked him to play at the opening, and he did the concert piano of Čiurlionis, who, you know, it's very strange situation with Čiurlionis because he was somehow considered to be Lithuanian artist with some Polish, at least education, But in a way, we are proud of Čiurlionis. I mean, I'm proud of Čiurlionis.
Good.
Anyway, yeah, I started to cooperate with the artists from Lithuania as of 91. In different, I work with Eglė Rakauskaitė, with Mindaugas Navakas. Of course, the first was Deimantas Narkevičius. So not only in Warsaw, not only in Poland, in different places. I have very good friends among art critics and curators. At least three of them are my real friends. It's Raminta Jurenaite, it's Lolita Jablonski, and Casey Tuskuzinas. These are the people who are I mean, they still are in my heart, although I don't travel to Vilnius often enough to watch what's going on because you have a very lively stage. I mean, artistic stage. You really there's a lot of going on here. So I need to come here more often, but I'm getting old, and I'm doing this and that, and I have my obligations. So
I hope that you will really come more often, and I'm very happy that you came this time and brought this wonderful exhibition. And I really happy that you taught this show. Thank you for your talk. It
thank you
was
very
pleasure
much,
to talk
Laima.
to
It
you.
was pleasure.
Yes. And thank you for Mo Museum for really making this possible, that you made together such a great show. I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.